Hi everyone, here is a video of your test review. I know you guys have completed it, but now I just want to go over it so you guys have this to study off of before we take our test. So this is important to look over. This is a very important video to watch because when I come back we will be taking the exam. We'll talk about a few things and then we're going to go ahead and take it. I know I've been gone, but we got to stay on track, okay? So for the first one, all we're doing is evaluating, right? So we're just going to plug in. So if I have f of -4, I'm going to plug that into this equation, okay? Because this one is an f, so you have to make sure you're following that, okay? So if I have f of -4 equals x minus 4, I then need to go ahead and plug -4 into x, okay? Equals -4 minus 4. In this case, we are doing keep, change, flip. And my answer will be f of -4 equals -8. So make sure you have that down, okay? Now, number 2, this is important to note, okay? It's h, which means it goes to this equation. Don't just think it goes to the one above it, okay? It does not. So I have h of 2, and the equation I'm going to use is h of x equals x plus 6 squared, okay? Then I'm going to come plug 2 in, because that's what this tells me. Everywhere I see an x, I'm going to plug 2, okay? Then we're going to use PEMDAS. So this one is important with PEMDAS, okay? Parentheses always goes first. I wrote a. See, so make sure you write the right number, okay? 6. So h of 2 equals 8 squared, and 8 squared equals 64. So that's your answer. Okay, then we're going to hop to the next one. Notice here, this is a G. We are plugging G into this. Okay, G, they match. Do not just plug it into the top one because you want to. Okay, so we now have G of -24. And we are using G of x equals the absolute value of 12 minus x plus 5. Okay, so now everywhere we see an x, we're going to plug in 24. Now, important to realize, we need to put this in parentheses because it's a -24. Okay, so I am now going to have 12 plus 24 because two negatives make a positive, right? Then I'm going to add whatever in the absolute value bars. Okay, so we have 36 plus 5. I'm going to write that because I'm running out of room. Okay, I'm going to leave a little circle right here. And I'm going to put G of -24 equals 36 plus 5, which is 41. So that's your answer for that one. Okay, so those are super simple. We learned that all the way back in Algebra 1, maybe even pre-algebra. Okay, so that's how you will conduct those. Okay, then we're going to go on to the next one. So here we are using either operation or composition. Okay, so that's going to be indicated. This is important to remember what this looks like and what this would look like. Okay, what composition looks like and what operations look like. So this one, this is the operation, and the operation we're using is subtraction. Okay, subtraction. So when we have to remember, when we have subtraction, there's one big rule when we do operations, okay? So if I have f of x, I know that f of x is x minus 2, okay? So in parentheses, I'm going to write x minus 2. Super important. Minus, right? Minus. And then in parentheses again, whatever g is. So in this case, what is g? G is 3x plus 4. Now remember, when we are subtracting, we can either flip the signs of each of our terms in our second parentheses, or you can distribute. Okay, you can distribute that negative. So in this case, my first parentheses is staying the same, right? My first function is going to stay the same. Then I'm going to distribute that negative, or I'm going to flip my sign. So I have a positive 3x, so now I have a negative 3x. I had a positive 4, so now I have a negative 4. Okay, so that's that. Then you're going to go ahead and combine like terms, okay? Remember, like terms have the same exponent or the same variable, okay? So in this case, these are like terms, and 1x minus 3x is negative 2x. And then I have negative 2 minus 4, which gets me negative 6. So that becomes my answer, okay? Now the next one, we are adding. So I have h of x. So I'm not going to use parentheses on my first one, okay? You don't have to when you're adding, either on any of them, okay? So I have negative x squared plus 6. That's my h of x. Then I'm going to add it to I'll do it in a different color so you guys can see. We're going to add it to f of x, okay? Now here, this is a good time to look at like terms. This term and this term are not like terms because they do not have the same exponent, okay? The only like terms that are here are the 6 and the 2. So this term's going to come down and this term's going to come down. Then 6 minus 2 is 4. But remember, it's important, standard form. So I'm going to standard form, important. Okay, when we're doing these. So who remembers standard form? ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, this needs to look like that. So I'm going to switch to negative x squared plus x plus 4. Okay, that's how we would write that. So that is our answer for number 2. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and go on to number 6, okay? And we are multiplying here, so in parentheses are important, okay? So I'm going to put my f of x in parentheses. And then I'm going to put my g of x in parentheses because that is what I am multiplying, okay? Now, this one's a little difficult, okay? I want to see, so you kind of try and do it, okay? I know I didn't teach this yet. I'm going to get that into a little bit later, but on your test it won't be. But I want you guys to try and do this. So this is what you call FOIL. Okay? FOIL. So how we FOIL is we multiply. Remember when we were multiplying? We multiply our first two terms. So this is my first term and this is my first term. So x times 3x is 3x squared. Okay? Then I need to do my outer terms. So I will do that in a different color, okay? And I will actually change this O to blue. So it can stay. I will go one by one, okay? So if we did the first, now we're going to do the outer. So the x and the 4 are my outer terms, okay? They're the outer sides of the parentheses. Now x times 4 is plus 4x, okay? Now my next part of FOIL is I, okay? Those are my two inner terms. So the negative 2 and the 3x, okay? They're the inner terms of the parentheses. Now negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x, okay? And then the last one stands for L, okay? The last two terms of the parentheses. So the negative 2 and the positive 4, okay? And that gets negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Then we would go ahead and add like terms. I won't have this on your test because we didn't go over it. I do plan on going over it in an upcoming unit, okay? So here are my like terms, 4x plus minus 6x, which gets me negative 2x. Nothing else is like terms, okay? So it just stays. That would be my answer, okay? All right, now here, this is a composition, right? So I'm going to start composition, okay? And we have f of x and g of x. So remember, we always write down the first one first. So I have g of x equals 3x plus 4, all right? And we're going to plug f of x into g of x. So g of f of x equals 3. Now plug in f of x. So my f of x is x minus 2. And don't forget that plus 4. Okay, so this is a composition. I'm plugging f of x into g of x. And then I just need to go ahead and distribute. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 plus 4. Okay, so g of f of x. It's important to have that in front. So here, my like terms, here. So my 3x stays the same, and I come out with negative 2. And see how I keep listing this. This needs to be in your final answer, okay? So that's how we do the first page. Okay, on to the second. So here, what I want you to do is I want you to find the mistake. I want you to redo the problem and then explain to me what she did wrong, okay? So I'm going to look here. We are doing g of x minus f of x. So we set it up right because g of x was x minus 3. Oops. Okay. G of x was x minus 3 and f of x was 5 minus 2. Good. See how the use of parentheses, that's really good, okay? Then they made the 5x negative. Great. But look what they did here. This is important. They kept this a negative 2, right? Because remember, when you distribute, a negative and a negative becomes a positive 2, okay? So you can come over here and say, when you're explaining it, you're just going to say, she did not distribute / change the sign of the negative 2. Okay, I would take that for an answer. And then you're going to come and do it by yourself. Okay, so if I have x minus 3 minus 5x minus 2. Remember, she set it up correctly, right? But then we need to properly distribute or flip my signs, whichever way you do it, okay? So I have x minus 3 minus 5x plus 2. So important, plus, let me get to the highlighter, plus 2. This is super, 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 super important. Okay, and then you're going to go ahead and combine like terms. So here are my like terms, and these are my like terms. So x minus 5x gets me a negative 4x, and negative 3 plus 2 gets me a negative 1. So this would be my end answer. Okay, that would be my end answer. So here, on A, B, and C, these are super, super easy. All you're doing for me is telling me whether or not what the function is. So our 6 parent functions, right? Parent functions. Okay, so the 3 we're going to concentrate on are linear, quadratic, and absolute value. So here, okay, y equals x equals linear, y equals x squared is quadratic. Hope I could fit this all. Y equals x3 equals cubic. Y equals square root of x equals square root. Now all of these end in function, okay? And then I have one more, which is y equals 1 over x, which is rational. So this one, and this one would be considered other for this problem, okay? So when I look here, it's important on number 1, on A, whatever, 9A, it's important to look at this. I know there's a fraction. I know you want to automatically think it's this, but it's not, okay? You got to look at those absolute value bars. Those are important, okay? That gives it away immediately, okay? And this becomes an absolute value. Whenever you see those bars, it does not matter if there is a fraction in front, if there's a squared here, we got to look for those absolute value bars, okay? The next one, we don't see an absolute value sign. We don't see any square root symbol. We don't see a fraction. We don't see an exponent. So automatically we know it has to be linear because it's just an x, okay? There is no exponent there or any sort, okay? So it's just linear. This last one, we do see an exponent, okay? So you're going to come down here and look at which one has a 2 in the exponent. So I know anytime that there's a 2 as an exponent, it is quadratic, okay? So that's all I want you to do for those. We're really just working on our parent functions, okay? All right, number 10, okay? So here we are going to graph or see what our graph is for our function. Okay, we did this on our parent function discovery sheet when I had you guys use the calculators. Okay, so remember, if you want, this is y equals x squared. y equals absolute value of x, and y equals x. So it's important to study that sheet that I gave you, okay? So it's important to have that parent function sheet that we did. So in this case, when it loops like this, we know it's a quadratic every time, okay? When it's a straight line, this is important, okay? The word linear has a word in it, and that word is line. That's important. When you just see one singular line, that means it's linear, okay? And then if you think, this is another hint, okay? When you see a V like this, an exact V, see how perfect it is? It's a perfect V. Think of absolute value and V, okay? So that's how you're going to know that this is an absolute value from the graph. So those are just little tricks, okay? Now, okay, this is what we've been just working on. I always tell you guys, always use your points first. So I'm going to go ahead and write my points down over here. And I have a -3, -3, 4. And then I'm going to drop down to here, which is 1, -5. Then I'm going to go here, which is 4, 2. And then 7, 3. Okay? So those are my parent function points. That's my original function points. Okay? Now, what I want you to do is you're going to go ahead and tell me everything on here. You're going to tell me on your test, it'll say 1, give me points of PF. 2, verbal description. 3, I'm going to write this somewhere else, or I'll just do the problem down somewhere else, okay? 3, new transformation rule. And lastly, 4, there's 5 points. New points, new TF points. So TF will be over here, okay? And then lastly is the correct graph, okay? So on your test, it'll have those 5 points. I'm going to go ahead and do this down here, okay? So my 1 point, my number 1, I have it done. Number 2, I'm going to do a verbal description, okay? Now I see 2 verbal descriptions in here, okay? So first I'm going to look at my inside. Remember when we're inside, we go left and right, okay? And we always do opposite of the sign. So I have a +2, so I'm going to go left 2, okay? So my first verbal description is left 2, okay? My second verbal description, because I have 2, this negative is outside, right? Remember, when we just see a negative in front of the F or in front of the X, it's a reflection, okay? So this is a reflection over the X axis, okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and note, I know that when I'm inside, it affects my X. And then when I have a reflection over the y-axis, it affects my y, okay? So now I've done number 1 and I've done number 2, okay? Now I'm going to write my new transformation rule. We said that when we're inside, it affects my x, and we are going left 2. So it's going to say x -2, okay? Now remember, when we have a reflection over the x-axis, correct? We are making our y negative, okay? So it becomes a -y. So now I've done 1, 2, and 3. So now I need to go make my new points, okay? So what I'm going to do with my points is move them over, okay? So I'm going to do all my x values first. So I'm going to do all these first in blue. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that into x -2. So I have -3 -2, which gets me a -5. Then I'm going to plug this 1 in. I have 1 -2, which gets me a -1. Then I'm going to plug the 4 in. 4 -2 is 2. Then I'm going to plug the 7 in. 7 -2 is 5. So now I have all of my new x values, okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and do my y's. So here, I am just making all of my y's negative, okay? Because there's a negative in front of my y. Now, if they're already negative, I have to make them positive, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do just as I did with my x's. So 4 now becomes -4. -5, now we have two negatives, and two negatives make a positive, okay? Then the 2 becomes -2, and then the 3 becomes -3, okay? So now I'm good with number 4. I graphed my new points, okay? I found my new points. Now I just need to graph, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and graph. So I have -4, or -5, -4. Then I have -1, 5. Then I am at 2, -2. And then finally I am at 5, -3. Okay? And then you're going to go ahead and draw your lines. And make sure your lines are going from left to right. Okay? Perfect. That would be the answer. So make sure you have this. Okay? So these are the five important points. Okay? Super important. Perfect. So now we are going to find the inverses of one of functions. Okay? This whole page is on inverses. So we're going to do number 12. Okay? So I have f of x equals, it's already there, 3x plus 6. Remember, my first step of inverse function is to make my f of x, to switch my f of x to y, okay? So y equals -3x plus 6. My second step is to switch my x and my y. Now see, I am just flipping my x and my y. I'm not changing any numbers. I'm not bringing the -3x to the other side. I'm just changing my x and my y. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and solve for y. So I have to get y by itself. So I am going to, this says graph. We need to cancel this out because I didn't give you graph. Okay, so you're just finding the inverse. Okay, so I will cross that out for you online, okay? So here, subtract 6 from both sides. We have x minus 6 equals -3y. Then I need to divide -3 to both sides, okay? These cancel. This had canceled. So now I'm left with y equals x minus 6 all over -3. But I'm not done, okay? My final answer, I have to change y to f inverse of x, okay? Which equals x minus 6 all over -3. So that's my answer for number 12. I'm going to follow the same steps with number 13. Now, just because it says g of x, do not freak out, okay? You are just going to write y. Just because it doesn't say f of x, you still change it, okay? It still changes. So we have y equals 2x minus 1. So that was my first step. Now I'm going to switch x equals 2y minus 1. Same thing. Now I'm just going to solve. I added 1 to both sides, and now I'm going to divide 2 to both sides. And I'm left with y equals x plus 1 over 2. But I am not done. Okay, important. Points will be taken off if you don't have it written in this final form. Okay, so that's your answer there. All right, so now we're going to graph. Remember to note the order pairs below each graph. Remember, I told you this was going to be on a test, and I needed points, okay? So left to right. So I'm going to go here first. -4, -3. Then I did -3, 4. Then you could say 0, 0. Then 0, 3, which is this point. Sorry. Then you can say 1, 4. And 2, 2. Now remember, to find ordered pairs for our new one, we're going to come over here. We want to find the inverse. All you're doing is switching your x and your y values, okay? So my first one, let's do it in a different color. I was here, -3, -4. If you want to go ahead and graph, you can, okay? Then I'm going to come down here, and it's going to say 4, -3. So 4, -3. 0, 0 obviously stays the same. Now here becomes 3, 0. This one becomes 4, 1. And 2, 2 obviously stays 2, 2. Okay, now with these, you do not connect any lines. You just leave it like so. Okay, that's important. That's all you need to do. But you will have you have points for 1. This is a 1 point, all of these to list these. All of this is another point, and the graphing is another point. Okay, so don't get points off just because you didn't want to write it down. And lastly, number 15, we're just determining if we switched my x's with my y's. Okay, so I had -4. This one's good. All right, so here, remember, I found the mistake. Okay, they are not inverses because of what? This does not have a -2. Okay, reminder, does not matter here with negatives. We're never switching our negatives. We are just switching x and y. Okay, so I can go down. This is not. Then I'm going to do the next one. Good and good. Okay, but we already see that one of these terms, one of these matches, are not inverses of one another. So how you would explain this? You would say they are not inverses because -2 and 5 is not the inverse of 5 and 2. Okay, they were not switched properly, or they were not switched. You could say the 2. Oops, I will have to go and write that back. In the first table, 2 is negative. In the second, it is not. Okay, so that's how you would describe something like that. Okay, so that is your review. Remember, this is a quiz grade. I have just given you every single answer with all of the work. It's important, if you got this wrong, to change it. Okay, it's a quiz grade. Do not get a bad grade on something I did for you on a quiz. Okay, if you have any questions, contact me.